Living in Lagos was a whirlwind, but I loved every moment of it. The energy of the city, with its busy streets, the honking cars, the constant hum of voices, it all made me feel alive. I had moved here after my marriage to Tond, the love of my life. We'd met in Abuja during a tech conference, and it was love at first sight. After a year of dating, he proposed, and we planned our future together. However, I hadn't anticipated the storm his mother would bring into our lives. From the very first day I met her, it was clear Mrs. Abike had no intentions of welcoming me with open arms. She wore her disapproval like a mask she rarely took off, examining me with cold, assessing eyes that seemed to strip me bare of my dignity. During our engagement ceremony, she had whispered to Tond, loud enough for me to overhear, that he could do much better. Tond's family was wealthy, and I came from a middle-class background. I was an only child, raised by my widowed mother, who worked as a nurse. I knew I was marrying up, but I had hoped love would be enough. However, from that day forward, Tond's mother was determined to remind me I didn't belong. After our wedding, things only grew worse. Tond and I had barely settled into our small apartment in Lekki when Mrs. Abike started showing up unannounced. She would knock on the door in the early mornings, her face set in a permanent frown, immediately finding fault with everything from the way I organized the kitchen to the meals I cooked. One Saturday, as I was preparing jollof rice for lunch, she walked into the kitchen, her nose wrinkling as if she smelled something rotten. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "Cooking jollof rice for lunch, Ma," I replied politely. She sniffed. "Is that what you think my son wants to eat? Why didn't you make pounded yam and egusi? Tond deserves real food, not this student food." I bit my tongue and forced a smile. "I'll make pounded yam next time, Ma." She gave a short, humorless laugh. "If you don't know how to cook, just say so. I can send our cook over to teach you." It took every ounce of self-control not to respond. I could feel my heart racing, a mix of anger and frustration bubbling inside me. It wasn't the food, it was that no matter what I did, it was never good enough. Tond was caught in the middle. He knew his mother was difficult, but he loved her deeply, and despite everything, he wanted us to get along. I often saw the conflict in his eyes, but he rarely confronted her, hoping instead that things would resolve themselves. After a few months of her frequent visits, I noticed that she seemed to have an agenda. She would show up during times when Tond wasn't home, asking prying questions about our marriage. Did Tond seem happy? Was he coming home on time? She never outright accused me of anything, but her words were laced with insinuations that left me feeling uneasy. One day, after a particularly tense encounter, I decided I needed to talk to Tond. He came home late, looking exhausted, but I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Tond," I said softly, sitting beside him on the couch, "I don't know how much longer I can handle this. Your mom. She makes me feel like a stranger in my own home." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know, Folik. But she's my mother. She means well, she just has a hard time adjusting." "Adjusting?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "She treats me like I'm an intruder. She's constantly criticizing me, and it's not fair. I need you to stand up for me." He looked at me, a flicker of guilt in his eyes. "I don't want to cause more issues, Folik. If I confront her, it might make things worse." His words stung, and I felt tears prick my eyes. But I knew I couldn't force him to choose between his mother and me. I went to bed that night feeling defeated, wondering if I'd made a mistake marrying into this family. Weeks passed, and her visits continued. She became more brazen, even questioning our finances and hinting that I wasn't contributing enough to the household, even though I had a good job as a project manager. One evening, she came over with a guest, her friend, Mrs. Adesanya, a well-known matchmaker. "Oh, Tond, my dear," she said loudly, I was just telling Mrs. Adesanya that good wives are hard to find these days. Not every woman knows how to take care of a husband. The implication was clear, and Tond looked visibly uncomfortable. I wanted to say something, but I kept quiet, feeling the weight of her words, but the breaking point came a few months later. I had just found out I was pregnant. I was thrilled, and I couldn't wait to tell Tond. That night, we celebrated quietly, just the two of us, sharing dreams of the future. However, the joy was short-lived. When we told his mother, her response was a slap in the face. "So, this is your excuse now?" she said coldly. "You think having a baby will secure your place in this family?" I was stunned, too shocked to respond. I could see the hurt in Tond's eyes as he looked at his mother, but for the first time, he didn't stay silent. "Mother, that's enough," he said, his voice steady. "Folake is my wife, and you will respect her. This is our child, and you should be happy for us, not whatever this is." For a moment, she seemed taken aback. But her expression hardened, and she left without another word. That night, Tond held me tightly, apologizing over and over. I could feel the sincerity in his voice, but the damage was already done. The pregnancy brought complications. I had to take time off work and was often bedridden. Tond was supportive, doing everything he could to help. But his mother's hostility continued, even escalating as she spread rumors in the family, accusing me of manipulating Tond, of being a lazy, unworthy wife. One afternoon, while Tond was at work, she came over unannounced. She stood at my doorstep, her face a mask of disdain. "I don't know what spell you've cast over my son," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "But it will wear off, and he'll see you for who you truly are. Don't think this baby will save you." Her words felt like knives, each one cutting deeper than the last. I realized then that nothing I could do would ever make her accept me. She saw me as a threat, as someone unworthy of her son's love. And as painful as it was, I decided I couldn't let her control my happiness any longer. The day I went into labor, Tond was by my side, his hand holding mine through every painful contraction. It was a long, difficult birth, but when I finally held our son in my arms, all the pain and turmoil faded away. I looked at Tond, tears streaming down my face, and for the first time in months, I felt whole. When his mother came to the hospital, she looked at the baby briefly, then turned to Tond. "You need to take charge of this child's upbringing. After all, you wouldn't want him raised by someone without family values." This time, I didn't keep quiet. I looked her in the eye and said firmly, "I am his mother, and I will raise him with all the love and values he needs. Whether you approve or not doesn't matter anymore." Tond put his arm around me, standing by my side. "Mother, this is our family now. If you want to be a part of our lives, you need to respect that." She left without another word, but I felt a sense of closure. I realized that I couldn't change her, couldn't make her love me, but I didn't need to. I had Tond, our beautiful son, and a life that we would build together. Over time, she softened. Perhaps it was the charm of her grandson, or maybe it was seeing that her actions hadn't broken us. But she was never the warm, doting mother-in-law I'd once hoped for. And while it still hurt at times, I accepted it, knowing that my happiness wasn't tied to her approval. Living in Lagos, with all its noise and chaos, became our own little adventure. We built our family, one day at a time, and I learned to stand strong. I had faced a storm, endured it, and emerged with my family intact. As I watched Tond with our son, playing and laughing, I knew that for better or worse, I had chosen love. And that love, tested by fire, was stronger than anything his mother could have thrown at us.